Welcome to the Threshing Floor Podcast, your premier destination for discussion and commentary on the redemption trading card game and its community. Kick back and relax as we catch you up on the latest news, tournament results, and deck building strategies to take your game to the next level. Now, here are your hosts, John Hendricks and Ager the Wise.
Yeah, boy.
Yep, that's us. Here we are. Man, how does it feel, Jake, to be in live and living color with your new toy?
New computer. Let's go.
Yes, we have endured some tough times in the past, but you were on a new machine. Now your machine is making my machine look old. So
Yep.
Well, that's cool.
Thank you, John.
Glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I guess first off, just because I know I'm going to forget, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you at the beginning, like every podcast episode that we record when we can record. This one is brought to you by the best retailer in the game, and that is Your Turn Games. So go and check them out for any of your redemption gaming needs.
We pay the bills.
We paid the bills. So how's life been going for you, sir?
Life's been good. Very busy. Still got a lot of stuff to do, but I got a redemption weekend, and that was fun. On the personal side, I got to do some witnessing with my wife, with some neighbors the other week. So that was really fun. We had some pizza, some Bible study, and they want to have us back. So praise the Lord for that. It's been a really blessed season for us. Lots of stuff going on with the baby coming, but just we're full. Time is full, but we're also just living an abundant life, and we're praising God for that. So
that's
my mom's
cool.
sick. We can pray for her, but that's otherwise things are going pretty well.
Yeah. Well, cool. I guess I'll give a cool little thing. So I was going to talk about it last week, and we ended up not getting to record, but that's kind of okay because we also ended up having to postpone it. So I still haven't done it yet, but this past Saturday, which was the 15th, we had a redemption hangout day planned here in my town. There's a newer player that popped up. I can't recall if I mentioned it at all or anything before when we recorded, but so this guy, Eric, popped up. He's, I'll give him a shout out. He's on the Discord. 57 Beef, I believe, is his name.
Nice.
So he looks to be a connoisseur of red meat steaks, and just I don't know. 57 Beef. That's just there's got to be some connotation. So hopefully I can figure out that and dissect that and figure it out. But so he's about 2 hours away from me over in Mississippi, which is the first time I think I've seen a player pop up on the Discord or anything from Mississippi. But he's, I believe, southwest from me, and then Jeremy is northeast from me, about 2 hours, 15 minutes. So within that straight line, basically, we're kind of the center point. So he wanted to, hang out and take a look at the game in a little bit more detail and maybe go over trying to teach him how to actually play, because you can get involved with the game and go pretty deep before you actually know rules and things or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So we had that plan to do a hangout day here, and we ended up having to postpone because of a weather threat, 5 out of 5 for potential tornadoes and things on Friday and Saturday this past weekend. So we pushed it a week. So this coming Saturday, we are planning to get together and do that. But I am hopeful and a little bit of obviously prayer and things to see if it can develop into that. But hopefully this is the start of a potential budding local play group scene where maybe we can travel and do tournaments in a couple of different spots, but have the same core move within that little, I don't know, that timeline or distance that I mentioned, where he's southwest of me and then Jeremy's, within 2 hours one way, basically, or the other, and maybe do some tournaments here, then over there and whatever. Might be able to develop into something, and I'm hopeful that it will. So I'm looking forward to that. So you're talking about having a redemption playing weekend, getting some games in. Dude, I'm going to get to hang out and do redemption in my own town. That's
some paper
that's pretty
redemption.
cool.
Let's go.
Yeah,
That's cool. I like it.
Feather in the cap for actually playing redemption. That's
feather in the cap.
Which
in the fedora.
am
lady.
actually signed up for both the Lackey Grand Prix and the Zoom Discord.
Let's
and
go.
I believe this might be the first time. I feel like it might be the first time, but it might be like the second.
Mhm.
But I can't recall ever having done both of them at the same time concurrently.
That's awesome.
So I took a whim and signed up for both. And hey, we're playing Redemption. It's almost like it's tournament season.
Exactly. What's your deck of choice right now?
Well, because I'm a blue guy.
Yeah.
The deck for I guess Jay's list of Moabites and Genesis heroes. I've been playing that a little bit. I haven't done much tinkering with it, but I have done a lot of theory crafting of things that could be done with it. And I've talked to him about that a little bit. I've also played some Purple Heart because I really like the idea. I didn't play last year when a lot of people were, leaning into Nazareth builds and things and trying to perfect that or get it as good as you could. I didn't mess with it. I guess I wasn't playing that much outside of tournaments, so I didn't have much experience with it. But when he shared that list, I kind of picked it up. Actually, I'll be honest. I picked it up because he 5-0'd me. I was playing the Genesis list, and Genesis just folds to search counters.
Yeah.
So he beat me pretty good with that, and I picked it up, and I've played a few games with it. So those are the two I played the most recently. But I also have Joshua Thieves built.
Ooh, there we go.
I have the Clay Choose the Blocker built that Brian Jones is known for. Yeah. I have the Joshua's Banishment built.
Ooh.
And I have a lot of the cards pulled out to potentially build Big Clay. But I just haven't decided that I want to handle a physical 100-card deck.
100-card deck, yeah.
So
it's like you're taking a Type 2 deck to Type 1.
Yeah. But I think Keegan still has his deck built. And I feel like there's one more that I have built currently. But I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I have a handful of competitive decks that are built and ready to go.
And you got your strongest deck, Deacon's Heretics. And,
Deacons and Heretics, yes.
Oh, yes. Man. Just wait until you unleash that, everybody. It's going to be the best.
Yeah. Whenever I decide to unleash that, the world is not ready. But it is nice that tournament season feels like it's obviously this past weekend, even though we had to reschedule our Redemption in person because of a weather threat here in our region. I do know that there was the first state tournament that happened. Unfortunately, I don't have results to share from that, but the Connecticut state tournament. And so that's like the kickoff, I guess, because it's the first state tournament. And usually, I feel like a lot of times it's, I don't know if last year was Kentucky or if Kentucky the year before was the first one. But Kentucky's usually pretty close, or has been since Brian's kicked that back off and started hosting the state tournament there in Kentucky. But then Chad usually does the Oregon State tournament or whoever's hosting that. I think it's listed as Scott Stamp hosting, but that one's usually pretty early. But anyway, the first state tournament to go down is like the first domino, and now we're here. We're in tournament season.
We're going.
So someone out there has the state promo, which we have that. We can go over that. So that is cool. We'll talk about that in a little bit and share our thoughts on those cards. But just that first domino falling to here's tournament season, and now it's kind of like coming out of the shadows a little bit. It's almost like Redemption is like a 3-hour movie, right? In a dark theater.
No, it's an extended edition Lord of the Rings. There you go.
Which is actually going to be back in theaters for this summer. I don't know if all theaters, but the movies are going to be in the theater, extended cut. Crazy. And I'm probably going to have to watch them in the theater. Awesome. Anyway, before I lose my train of thought here. So Redemption overall is like watching a movie. The tournament season is like, it's like when you walk out of a 3-hour movie, you've been in the darkness, like, and that first state tournament, when tournament season's ready, oh man, this is what it's like. And then we're all good to go. But it just coming out of the theater, we gotta walk out, guys. We gotta get out of the off season and move into the real season. I'm excited about that.
I'm excited.
And
it'd be awesome.
It's kind of ironic because, I feel like we do this a lot where we talk about these opening conversations. I just have it listed that we'll give the sponsor at Your Turn Games a shout out here and make sure we don't forget it. And then also we have just listed literally opening conversations. There's never anything planned. We just we press record and whatever comes out, I'm sorry, on the other side. But like, we don't plan it, but a lot of times we'll end up talking about when we have the community mailbag, which we're going to do that. There'll be a question and somehow we'll just start talking about things that could correlate to questions on the community mailbag. So I guess it's foreshadowing and breaking the fourth wall down at the same time. So it's foreshadowing. That's the term that we're going to go with it. It's shadowing. There we go. Yes. So
I like it.
I guess we'll get into some cool recent news and things. So
Let's do it.
Sit back and relax while we get you caught up on all the latest news and notes from around the game and the community.
Nothing is bigger. I like that. I like that air guitar solo you did there. Okay. Jaden would be proud.
Let's go.
There's nothing bigger right now than the fact that there has been a huge, and I mean huge, could potentially shake the way that your deck is built, rules update. And I don't want to put a lot more into it than, obviously, every rules update carries a lot of weight, but this one feels overall it's great. I think all these changes are kind of the right thing to do for Redemption, but I am still trying to wrap my mind around exactly how they're going to affect my gameplay in the actual games. Like, you can think about it, but just playing the games out, some of these are going to be significant differences, like the permanent effects going away. But anyway, we're just going to very basic. We're going to go over what was posted and shared and kind of not necessarily all verbatim, but we're going to give you a lot of it, just kind of how it was presented. And then we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. Yeah. So I will start off and say that the latest updates for the reg, the ordeer, and the host guide are live.
Yes,
so
let's go.
Those are all available. Those are listed under resources on Land of Redemption. You can also get to those by way of Cactus, the official website, and they're also on the forums. There's plenty of ways to get to those. I believe they were also, I feel like they might have been linked when it was posted on the Discord.
Yeah, the announcements channel. I believe it's in the announcements channel.
So you wanna go over and tell us about the our read Aggie's words on the first one here, because these are copy and paste, baby. Exactly. So we can't make any mistakes.
Yeah. So we had the first change here was to duration. So now duration has an actual definition, and the status quo is restored for those well-equipped cards that we were talking about last podcast or the podcast before that. And similar abilities were only intended to last one phase. So no longer is it like well-equipped negate enhancements. Oh, he's still equipped on your turn, so it's negating enhancement. No. It's hurting you. So, the permanent cards, sites, forts, artifacts, lost souls end when removed or deactivated. The simple explanation for that is that current phase should be a default, and those cards override that default. So, now that they're removed, they don't have the current phase default. They have while they're in play as their default. So, when they're removed, they're gone. And triggers can only be used while the ability persists, so they don't usually linger on those permanent cards. This change does impact some optional after battle abilities on characters that have always persisted but are now easier to use. So some really cool changes there for duration. Really interesting stuff.
And so we'll continue going through these, and then we'll come back and kind of give some of our thoughts, because I don't want to pause, pivot, and start giving opinions and thoughts on it, and then go back into this is exactly the next update thing. So we'll go through all the updates, and then we'll circle back. So the next thing is hold, and this is one that has the potential for decks to kind of be built around a potential something, and then you have to update and change the way that you play because of the significance of this change. So hold can hold characters from hand and hold cards face down from territory. So the Darkness promo that was shared a while back now will work properly within the framework of the rules. A hold effect, and this is the big change, a hold effect can only target each card once in each prep phase. So each card can either move in or it can move out, but it can't do both. And this will help control and, lessen the impact and the almost the gimmick nature, if you will, of the Heavenly Host, Chamber of Angels combo or the Ashkelon Raiders camp thing that came out last year. I don't think anybody really took that and ran with it and was, trying to play in big competitive tournaments with that. But this stops them from working with just one card, but they can still function if there's multiple cards to rotate through. So it's more of a long game than, I'm going to do this in my prep phase to circumvent. All right. The next thing is Ignore. And this one is a huge quality of life thing for a lot of cards that were kind of left kind of in the dark when Ignore got changed. But Ignore has been combined with Withdrawal. And that means that all Ignore abilities will now function as a withdrawal ability. To the point that if you go to Ignore in the reg now, it will now point you to Withdrawal because it's literally the same thing. Yeah. So if a card ignores, it now withdraws. Just a 1-for-1 change. All right. Now, another thing is a new definition for begin a new phase. This is a new definition. So there's a reference for older cards and the II cards that use begin a new battle. So pretty straightforward there on that one at least. So overall, the landscape of these rule changes, these updates, there's the potential for them to really affect. I feel like it's almost, it's not like the 4 activation rule and the 1 territory class, which will absolutely affect every single game and a lot of the decisions within the game. But this feels a lot like the update to targeting, to where you could, things that were set aside, the default targeting and stuff, to where it has the potential to be very impactful in games and with the decisions you make in games. And it can also affect the usability of certain cards that maybe weren't quite as useful before, but now they have a more broad scope of targeting. This is kind of the same, to where I feel like it will have more of a direct impact more consistently in games with the permanent effects going away. But then, like the only being able to target with a hold in or out in your prep phase, not both, and things. Ignore. If you're playing cards that have Ignore abilities, if you're getting Faith of Moses' Parents and you're making that card, it's actually a really good battle winner now, like really good. So
it's not a really good. It's a decent battle winner because it can only hit 1 brigade. So like if they ever abandon multiple brigades,
but we're also pushing a lot of people to play less brigades.
Less brigades.
If I hit Crimson and you're playing the Joshua Thieves deck, you're pretty well hurt.
No, so there's that for sure.
But overall, what is your thoughts on the scope and magnitude of these changes?
These changes will not change literally every game you play, but it's going to be enough that if you play a few games, you're going to notice a change in a few of the games. The hold changes are definitely big. Like you said, getting rid of any combos that were abusing the fact that you could move things in and out of holds in prep as much as you want. This basically kills Ashkelon because
we'll go ahead and play the funeral music for it.
Exactly. You could do it once, but you need to capture 4 different characters to do it 4 times. So it's not going to happen anymore. Actually, it may be worse than that. But the point is, it's no longer there. Chamber of Angels host, you can use it for what? You can use it for 1 token every other turn. There's no reason to run that combo anymore. They're both good cards on their own, but the combo is gone. There's no more combo creating 4 tokens every turn for free. So that's there. That changes some decks. That gets rid of some of the decks that were trying to abuse the meat tokens for IJ to throw away your entire hand. So there's that. The duration stuff, as we talked about before, it's a buff to Lost Child Found, a buff to a lot of cards that would remove a card but not actually negate it. Now they don't have to negate it. There's lots of cool things. Oh, the triggers that happen after battle. Some cards that didn't really happen, like Aggie's talking about this Moabite. I forgot the card is for the Moabites. It's Moabite Marauders. But after battle, you may take or banish an enhancement in battle. Normally that wouldn't usually work because after battle is usually dead, or the heroes are dead, so there's nothing to target. But if they destroy your Moabite Marauders, now you'll be able to actually take an enhancement from battle. So that's really cool. Just lots of cool things that it changed. A lot of cards might be better. I love Ignore turning into Withdraw because it was just in a weird place. The mutual protection, it didn't cover what the cards used to do. So now you actually have a bunch of cards that actually have relevance. Like you said, Faith of Amram and Jochebed, or Moses' Parents, if you got, depending on which version you have. It's funny.
Do you have the fancy version or the not?
Serpent's Curse is, I guess it's, if you have, actually, I don't know. Like, animals ignore heroes, so animals withdraw heroes. So I guess you have to have an animal play CVN if used by the serpent. So there you go. Like CVN Battle Winner on the serpent there. Lots of cool cards here. The cards that ignore poisons, I'm sorry, that does nothing. You can't withdraw poison. But honestly, strategy season battle ignore angels. I don't even know how that works. How does High Priest Ananias work?
So
I don't know.
That means
we'll have to figure that out. We'll have to ask Aggie about this. But
I took that because I looked at it before. I thought that meant that as soon as a Sadducee enters battle, if he's active, then it would just withdraw. So it's almost. Yeah. I could be completely reading that wrong because that's very strong for a character to enable a battle winner ability. A battle winner
from the territory.
Yeah, from a territory class character. But they're so easy to turn off territory class characters.
Yeah.
What's the terrible thing about it? I mean,
that's like, we got.
I don't know. It's kind of wild because you would get your ability and then potentially underdeck some Lost Souls and then kick them all out.
Yeah.
And of course, since it would be. If you're facing only that kind of thing, then I guess they would get special initiative off of that, but they wouldn't be able to do anything about you underdecking Soul. I don't know.
That's crazy.
Call Aggie, get him on the phone.
Exactly. Get him on here. But like,
he didn't write an article about but what was it?
Man.
A couple of years ago, Banias, Bananias or whatever.
Dude,
you just had a light bulb.
Deacon's Heretic, you're gonna have to deal with Philemon. Ignore Heretics CBI. Like, how are you gonna deal with that? Like, he automatically battle wins against Heretics. That's crazy. So I mean,
I guess they're gonna lose a market share of the meta.
Exactly,
now.
Losing some real market share in the meta game report. So hey, like, this is really cool. I'm excited.
Overall, you think all these changes were positive?
I think they're all positive. Ignore was ignored, so now it actually has some like. I don't think they're going to print any more of them, but like it gives some of the older cards some actual use. The duration makes sense. Like just from a player, like why does Herod's Temple protect your characters even though I removed it? Like even though I discarded it, why is it still remaining for the rest of the battle type thing?
I think that's the biggest one because I think it affects people that are on the wherever your redemption journey is. The closer you are to the beginning, that's the more often that's going to trip you up. After you've been around the game for a little while, you just learn to live with it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way for things to operate. But if you're newer to the game, that's one of those really frustrating things like, oh, I'm going to get rid of your storehouse or whatever, and then I'm going to play something. Unless you got rid of it with like, what is it, like Shipwreck or whatever.
So they negated it already.
That, negates it and discards it. But if you just got rid of it, you were able to shuffle a card, but then the ability would still linger. It's just, and then especially the ones that had like the automatic triggers so that the card's gone, but then it still triggers because it's not a optional trigger. Mm-hmm. It's just way too confusing. And I think cleaning that up gives the game a presentation of, hey, we're trying to make it more simple and straightforward, especially we're advertising, and I say it a lot, we're advertising ages 7 and up. It's got to operate to where an ages 7 and up can operate the game, or we got to move that age up. And I think a lot of the rules have been done in a way to where, yes, it might affect some of the combo-y type things. It might affect some of the way that certain decks play. And it might feel like it's hurting a little bit of the potential strategy involved with the game at times, some of the rules over the last few years. But each one of them is moving us closer and closer to a more straightforward, intuitive game presentation to the newer player experience. And I think that's more important than players that have been playing for years, understanding how it plays and just knowing. I think the lifeblood of the game long term is going to be those new players and their experience coming in and sticking with it.
Yeah, so I'd say big props to the elders for this update, Marcus and the whole squad. And I also want to say they tried to do that negate update too, but that got a little hairy. They found some weird things on that. If you want to listen, you want to have some weird listening, listening. I had my phone read me Marcus's.
You had AI read it out for you
on the way to work, and I was like, "This is crazy. This is some timey-wimey, Jeremy Bearimy. Like, you don't know exactly because if it negates this, then negates that, and then negates this, and then you don't want this. It's an infinite loop. You don't want.
But how long does the negate last? You got to define the duration.
It's timey-wimey, wibbly wobbly, Jeremy Bearimy. It's just all those things. So they couldn't do the negate update yet, but I'm sure they're still working on stuff. So that'll be fun. Definitely
thanks to the elder team for putting this together. I know it was a little frustrating waiting on it because they gave us a heads up that this might happen, and we're working towards this. And then it was like it felt like a month, or maybe even a little more. I don't really know what the timeline is. It just feels like it's been at least a month where we've just been sitting around waiting for it, and then finally, randomly, I believe it was on March 11th. They're like, "Okay, here's the rules." And it kind of, I don't know how they picked the random days to do it, but they were just like, all right, let's go live with it. And so now it is in effect, and it was in effect before the first state tournament, so that no state or regional tournament happened under different rules, so that everything is kind of an equal playing ground. And I think that's the biggest thing when trying to do the timing for the rules is to get them in before some of those bigger tournaments. Otherwise, it could skew things. Like this deck did really well at a tournament, but now it's not as good because of the rule update and things like that. So I know that that's one of the important things that they work on is trying to have it be an equal playing field for at least the state and regional tournaments leading up to nationals. So it's live now. So you can go and check it out. Again, on the Land of Redemption under resources, or you can find it on the message boards, Cactus forums, or on the main page for Cactus. So before we move on to the rest of the recent stuff, the one thing I do want to mention is the host guide was also updated. And I feel like there's one thing that might be significant. After Nationals last year, I know Chad was pretty open, sharing about how he felt like he played the wrong deck. He checked 2 decks. And he felt like he should have played the other one. That's no longer going to be a problem for Chad because you're now only going to be able to check 1 deck at tournaments.
Huzzah.
So the whole like this combo deck I can check it. I know when Love at First Sight was happening, there was a couple of people that checked Love at First Sight deck and then checked another one so that they could pick and choose. And we're losing all of that, which I think is the right thing, and I think it simplifies things. Now you have to be really committed to whatever the deck is that you're playing, and I think that's going to be just a healthy thing just for the fact that it removes the option so that people don't get in the situation that Chad was in to where he feels like he made the wrong decision afterwards about which deck to play. Because now you only get one decision, you make it before the tournament, and you're stuck with that deck throughout the whole thing. So there's that.
Like good change.
So as far as other things, I do want to mention that Land of Redemption is home to the pair of articles going over the rules changes. So you can go and read from the source. These are his own words, Mr. Marcus, Redemption Aggie. So you can go and check that out and read kind of a little bit more information. I know that we mentioned briefly about the negate issue. You know, you mentioned having your phone read it to you. I don't know if you should do that because it can be a little much, but you can go and check that out. But then also Tim, I think he's the only one because I feel like Jaden didn't have a video last week. I'm pretty sure I probably should have confirmed that, but I just feel like I knew it, so I didn't put it on the list here. I didn't see a video from him last week, which is fine. I'm not calling you out. We don't record regular enough on schedule so that I can't be throwing stones at you. But Tim does have a couple of videos that have come out in the last week. One of those is, well, I guess both of them big clay, but then they're based on the opponent. One of them is Lackey Grand Prix Round 1, and that's going to be against Card Game Fanatic. And then, I think I put these wrong. I think Card Game Fanatic was the Zoom Discord game. And the Lackey Grand Prix, I believe, was against Neopolitan, which was piloted by Joe Schaefer. It's his deck.
Oh, wait.
Am I wrong? we're going to get our research team right on it, guys. Breaking down the fourth wall. Let's just double check ourselves here.
Before we wreck ourselves.
Inaccurate notes on your outline could be bad for your health.
So yeah, the game for Schaefer was on LGP and Card Game Fanatic was on Zoom.
Okay. So Zoom game against Card Game Fanatic, and then Lackey Grand Prix against Joe Schaefer with the deck we're calling Neopolitan. That's important because later on in the podcast, we're actually going to have Joe come on and talk a little bit about his deck, which is mostly us just asking him questions about his deck. Because I don't have any real gameplay with it. I don't think you do either, so it's a lot of more curiosity questions and things. But break down the fourth wall. We've already recorded that. Stick around for it. Great stuff. We mentioned, I think the last episode, we mentioned having Player of the Month. So when we record our next episode, it will be coming out after the full month of March has happened. So we will be announcing our first Player of the Month. So we're on the lookout for who's going to be the first Player of the Month. Get a couple of booster packs at random from Your Turn Games. And again, this can be someone with competitive success, someone that has volunteered their time to help the community in some way. Just kind of a whole plethora of things that you can do to get a shout out here as Player of the Month. So we've got our eye out, I guess. We're keeping a weather eye out. And speaking of weather, you see that transition I did?
Yes.
We're going to talk about the forecast real quick. We did do forecast. We had the results come out for that. They were shared in the Zerubbabel's Temple Discord. But we're getting ready to do the next one. So you got any quick, brief thoughts on what did the last one kind of rate out how you thought it would?
I think it did. And again, I'm telling people, if you want to vote on this next one, get into the Z Temple. Ask somebody for an invite to the Z Temple. Ask me. Ask John. Ask Jaden. Ask somebody. But we had some good responses. We had 13 responses. We'd love to have 13, 15, 20 responses on the next one. Here's what it broke down with. We'll start at the back. We'll start at the bottom here. So Meek White was rated the lowest at 6 out of 10. Also followed by Green Soul Hide at 6.6. IJ Turbo was at 7, and that they're going to lose the ability to get that Turbo Meeks from Chamber of Angels too, so that might hurt it. Jay's Genesis was at 7.1, Purple Heart at 7.8, and Soul Surfer at 7.8. So Chad's really sitting there, right there in the middle of people's forecast area. Clay CTV at 7.83. Now we have a jump into these 8 decks. We have Clay and Harrods at 8.3, Joshua Gray Black at 8.4, and Clay Black Gray at 8.6. And the 2 dominant decks in the minds of people in the meta. So these are what people are most afraid of. They think is most powerful. Nativity Herods and Joshua Thieves. Nativity Herods at 9.1 and Joshua Thieves at 9.8. Again, I asked everybody to please rate at least one deck 10. So Joshua Thieves got the most 10 rankings out of that. And that's what people are worried about right now. Joshua Thieves, Nativity Herods, and Clay decks. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay. So one thing that I do know is going to happen is, well, you might have given some foreshadowing because with the rules update, losing some of the speed element of the Turbo IJ, maybe that deck isn't going to be on the voting. Maybe I don't know. I might I don't but Big Clay, I feel like, is definitely going to be on this list. And I'm trying to think in my head where I really think it's going to rate out, where it's going to grade out. Also, I think Jaden's deck with blending the post-exilic with the Joshua stuff and getting the banish is kind of like the take deck where you have the offense and defense working so well together. Using the banish stuff on defense to be able to draw Jeshua both on offense and defense to top deck a goal, like the consistency boost of just being so synergistic throughout the deck, I think it's a complex deck. I do think that is a straightforward statement. The deck is not straightforward, but I feel like it's a good deck.
I need to see it in action. Like, for me, it's not fully like clicking in my head yet. But if he can introduce this, that adds a whole new offense, that adds a whole new defense that's not being seen in the metagame. Like, cause it's not really Joshua. It's mostly post-exilics, right? Like, it's using a little bit of Joshua, but it's mostly post-exilics, and it's Edomites. And Edomites have not been part of the metagame so far. So if that can stick, that can be a big change in the metagame. Maybe fracture up the shares of the metagame.
I think both of those are probably going to grade pretty well. How high do you think, just before we move on, how high do you think Big Clay is going to grade in the minds of other people? Because I feel like Tim's given it a lot of, it's got a really strong platform for publicity.
Yeah. I mean, we've always had people pushing it, Seth, and I pushed 100 cards a few times too, but I don't think anyone's given it as much like at least recently, have given it as much effort all at once. A lot of theory crafting. Tim's really been putting a lot behind it. He believes in it a lot. I asked him the other day if he's still on this train. He believes yes. That he
thinks it's the best deck he's ever built. And it's hard to argue.
But you can you can play through them. Now I'm not fully convinced yet, just because like I know there's value in 100 card decks, but I also know that also creates some inconsistencies, and I hate Meek Souls as a thing in decks, because obviously it makes your defense stronger because you can bury, you can do all those things Meek Souls, but it also means that when you draw a bunch of souls, you feel bad, as opposed to like in my decks when I draw a bunch of souls, I'm like, yes, I drew 6 souls. This is amazing. Like I get to draw 2, I get to lawless, I get to negate your characters in territory. Like so, like we'll see. Like, time will tell. I'm cautiously optimistic and pessimistic at the same time at the Big Clay. So we'll see how it actually folds out. He's going to have to keep on pressing it hard enough to get some more wins on it, and then maybe see if it can transfer to other people playing that deck. So yeah.
Do you think that it'll grade? Let's say 7.5, 7.5 is the mark. Do you think it grades higher than that? Lower
I'm taking the
that?
over on that one for sure.
You're taking over?
Yeah.
You think it's pushing 8?
Yeah, I think it'll rate around 8.
Okay.
Because Tim's a good enough player. He's built a good deck, and like I think some people will rate it low, but I think most people will rate it.
Jay is for sure putting. What's the lowest you said he could do?
5.
Jay is for sure grading it a 5.
He's not going to do that. He's not going to rate it at a 5. There's no way.
He might go 4.9.
We said
just to break the rules.
Don't rate something low just because you think everybody else is stupid. Like, I'm gonna change the average on this.
Yeah, don't break the rules. Okay, so we'll move on. Meta forecast, new ones coming out. Be plugged into the Z Temple Discord so that you can be a part of the voting, and then the results will be shared. And I think the more people we have participate, the stronger of a resource we're going to be able to create for people to use. And it's going to be something cool that when someone that's been away from the game for a little bit can come back in and boom, this is a snapshot of the meta right now as we see it. Hopefully we can work it to where it is something that's that beneficial, but it does rely on participation. So make sure that you guys are plugged in and helping vote on that. The next thing we've got is the road to nationals, because nationals at the time of release for this episode, if I get it out on the day it's supposed to, 134 days away.
Wow.
So 134 days. So 4 months is roughly 120 days, a little over. So that's 4 months and a little bit away. So I'm just saying, make your plans. Get with a group of people, have an Airbnb, plan to stay at the church. Pre-registration is open. So if you are staying at the church, one thing that they need to know is so that they can have an expectation of what to expect as far as people that are using church for lodging. Make sure you go and pre-register and put on there and help them out with all of the information. One other thing that you will see for Nationals when you do the pre-registration is there's a question on there about whether or not you want to be in the redemption fantasy draft at Nationals, which we did last year. And poor Jake here drafted a bunch of people that weren't even involved because it was a first time experience. We didn't have a lot of information that was in a usable form. So we reached out to the people hosting, and they were gracious enough to let us include that on the pre-registration so that we can kind of get a head count of people that are willing to be in the draftable pool of players. And then when we have someone drafting, we don't make them look like Jake where they're up there just guessing at names that they know. Yeah, let me draft Chris Fashman.
I'm judging all the days. Okay.
But, I think it'll be better this time around having that information. So definitely want to thank those guys for doing that. But what that means if you select that option on the pre-registration form is that you're going to be in a list of players that are going to be drafted onto various fantasy teams. And then based on how you perform through the categories that you're registered for at Nationals will translate to who wins that. I don't want to say who the reigning champ is, but it's me. Okay. And yes, guys out there listening, especially the Allsteads, I know if you draft from North Central Regional, you do better than if you don't. I get it. Anyway, moving right along, we've got some cool things to share with you. We've got some cool cards. I am a little bummed out because I wanted to play the spoiler little thing and say, the may or may not be approved by the blah, blah, blah. Roses. But I started realizing I can't play it because these are actually released to the public now. So these are actually going to be promos. Like you can sign up right now on the host guide.
Why can't we just play it anyways, just for fun?
Should we just play it anyway?
Yeah, let's just play it anyways. Come on.
Okay. You talked me into it.
The following segment contains spoilers that may or may not have been approved by the Royal Order for the Secrecy of Expansion Sets. Proceed with caution.
Proceed with caution.
All right, proceed with caution. So the first thing we've got here, I'm going to go ahead and take a rebel stand. I know I'm going to get crucified for this. This seasonal promo, I dislike it in every way possible.
I love this thing.
I don't like it. I do not like this card.
I love this card.
Are you saying that just to be opposite of me?
I mean, honestly, I like the card, but I'm playing into this because I like being opposite.
Okay. I'm not a big fan of the artwork.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's the artwork mixed with the border.
Yeah. That
I'm not really feeling. Like, I don't want to. I'm not trying to bash anyone that came up with a design for this card or anything, or built this framework for this card. I think it's cool. I'm going to have some of them, and eventually there might be decks where I play them. I understand that there might be a purpose for this card. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't move the needle for me where we go from, like, there was no spoilers, right? And then somebody's like, hey, do you want a spoiler? And then it was this card, and I'm just like, my needle didn't really move. My needle was just, it's still sitting on E. There's no gas in my tank. The hype train is not fueled up on this card.
The hype train is fueled up here. As a player who loves looking for small incremental bonuses, this is, and to be clear, we can just say the card here, right? So this one is the new Hopper. So there's Hopper
New Testament Hopper.
Yeah. There's the Old Testament Hopper. We already had that. This is the new Hopper. So it's got the same name, which means you cannot play both of these in the deck. Obviously, it would be nice to play both of them, but you can't.
I wish you could.
Exactly. But you can play this New Testament Hopper, and it's the exact same as the Old Testament, except it's just got a different reference. And basically what this means is this card is the new default best Hopper for most decks. And the reason why is because there's a lot of effects right now that are protecting Old Testament lost souls. And because this is New Testament, it gets around that. So
it doesn't trigger their lost souls
exactly.
when it comes out.
Their lost souls. It doesn't work with their subdued, etc. Like Subdued is an Old Testament, right? But the point is, there's some Moabite cards that only target Old Testament Lost Souls. The point is, unless you're running Old Testament Unity, this is the proper Lost Soul to use in most situations. And really, it's not going to change most games, but those games that it changes are those games that you feel really good about. Like, they block, they're like, I forgot this hopper is New Testament. Okay, I got to give it up this New Testament. Like, when they thought they had a free block, and you're like, that's why I run that hopper, because if I ran the other hopper, like, you'd be protecting it, but I can get through and get this one. And I love cards that give you those small incremental gains. I like there was a difference between the promo Foreign Wives and the old Foreign Wives for a certain point until they changed the rules. And I was like, technically, it's better to play the old Foreign Wives. Like, technically, yes. Like, there's a bonus to playing so, like, until they change the rules, like, I love that there's, like, these small little
just
bonuses
give it
you can
up,
get
Jake.
for playing the right version of the card.
Just give it up.
You know, I like
it doesn't move the needle.
I love it. My needle's fully like.
I mean, you can imitate and give another. You can imitate it and give away your imitate and be one less soul for them to rescue. And it's kind of cutesy, but it just the needle doesn't move. Okay.
No, this is awesome.
So my needle is here, but this next one, my needle is all the way on full because this Prince of the Air regional promo is insane. So we've got another representation of whatever names you want to attribute to
Beelzebub,
the devil here. 10, 11, Demon, just Orange Brigade, Warrior Class, X identifier here is the number of opponents' good brigades.
Yes.
So let's just read this. You may play an evil New Testament fortress from deck or draw 2. All right, so you immediately get your Gates of Hell, your fancy version that came from Nationals last year.
Or if you already have it, you have Tyler draw you 2 cards.
You may underdeck up to X cards and or Lost Souls.
Amazing.
If they have Noah sitting in their territory, for example, that's 9.
Uh-huh.
You can, and then cannot be prevented. And then the regional promo from last year, if they use a draw or search ability, you have Judea mediums banned to this for a CBN underdeck, or you could potentially. There's so many things you can do with this.
So many things you can do
with this. You get Gates of Hell outright, and you've got Shepherd sitting in your territory. Now, granted, he could just draw 2, but if you played the New Testament Fortress, you could also technically go ahead and get you a draw 2 if you had something in your hand you wanted to underdeck, because you could come out, underdeck your own Shepherds, discard the bottom card of your deck at any time. Isn't that how Gates of Hell works? And then that Lost Soul would go in play, and then if put in play, you can underdeck to draw 1. There's some finagling you could do, some quirky little things.
Yeah,
but also this is like Demon Outsiders.
Yep.
Which, I mean, I think that's the nickname I'm going to give this call and just start calling it. This is Demon Outsiders. There's not a lot to dislike about this card.
No.
It doesn't have a gospel reference, so that is big because it's going to help balance out. Because if you could play this in Gospel Unity Demons, Demons would probably be one of the top tier defenses. I mean, this is going to push it definitely higher, but if you were able to get this in Unity for Gospel Demons, I mean, look out. Orange would be everywhere.
No, but yeah, this Prince of the Air, this is definitely something to put on your radar. Like, we talked about the Hopper. That card is good, but it's not going to break games. It might win a game occasionally, but it's just going to be like, oh, it's New Testament all the time. This Prince of the Air, this thing is actually extremely powerful. It's a big reason to splash or play Orange as in your defense. And this is a card that is immediately threatening, immediately powerful. And while Orange itself has not been something that's been seeing a lot of play recently, you could definitely see this card carrying Orange to some real either splashing or like main usage. So definitely something to keep an eye on right now. I'm going to give this one a 10 out of 10. Keep your eyes open. This card is powerful rating.
Even if you close your eyes, you might be seeing this one because you might see it in your nightmares.
Exactly.
You want to go over this state promo that we have too?
Yeah, so we have here a judge, and it is a judge that likes to kill animals. So obviously it's Samson, son of Manoah, 12-8 warrior class, and judge, he's got identifier of X, where X is the number of cards in hand. So he says you may discard an animal to prevent enhancements, and if alone, paralyze all evil characters with strength X or greater this turn. CBN. So this is our Judge John the Baptist in Samson.
Judge the Baptist?
Judge the Baptist. So right off the bat, very cool thematically. He discards an animal to prevent enhancements. He slew a lion, slew a donkey, all these things. So it's going to be really cool to see in the future, is what I'm saying. It's going to be really cool if he fits into a deck. Now that's the thing.
In the future, if he fits into a deck.
So as far as rating this card right now, I'm not going to rate this card highly because it is a hero without a home. Obviously, gold is
hero without a home. Dude,
exactly.
Somebody should build an entire deck of heroes that don't have their own offense and just blend them together and call it heroes without a home.
Heroes without a home. But really what it is he needs some judge synergistic cards, something to really make him shine. And currently, I just don't think there's any real reason to play a Samson in a deck, right? Like, Joshua decks want to have unity. He doesn't fit in a post-exilic deck. So, like, he doesn't really have a specific home right now. But if they introduce judges as a theme in an upcoming set and they give them some cards, like, when your judge attacks alone, you do this. When your judge does this, you do, like, then you can start seeing this card be in a huge piece to it. So, currently, this card is powerful, but with no home, there's no good reason to play this card unless you're just, I love Samson, I'm just going to play with him. But currently, there's no place for Samson, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. It feels a lot like, well, someone on the Elder team really likes demons because look at it. They had the Judean mediums come out, they had Gates of Hell come out, and now they've got Prince of the Air. And those are promos that kind of work together to make them each good because they fit into other promos that are getting printed or other like cards that are playable. Magic Charms a couple of years ago came out. You know, the rotation Magic Charms, and it's not a very playable card. It doesn't have a home. And it feels like Samson's kind of like in that mold to where it doesn't really have a home. Now, there was some gold stuff printed recently that allows it to be kind of forced into decks and things. It just doesn't it doesn't fit well within a I guess, competitively viable deck. There's not a deck that makes that card is like the missing link for it. So it feels a lot like the Magic Charms style of card to where it's a promo. So you feel like at some point something's going to come out to make it kind of playable, but then
for now
it's just
loading.
It's Malak the Nameless. You can play it, but you don't really have to.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to make sure we went over those first because those are the state and regional tournaments. And I mentioned at the top of this that the tournament season is fully kicked off now because we've had our first state tournament. Fortunately, I don't have the results to share with you yet. Hopefully I can get those and maybe we can share them on the next podcast or something. But that does bring us to
Oregon State.
The Oregon State tournament. Now that originally we thought was going to be the first state tournament before the Connecticut State tournament popped up on the schedule. Kind of, I guess, by surprise, at least to me. Checking just the Cactus setup on their website, listing out the tournaments. But that's going to be on, the Oregon State tournament's going to be on March 28th and 29th at Skyline Baptist Church in North Bend, Oregon. It's listed to be hosted by Scott Stamp. It's at Chad's church, but kind of hosted by Stamp, who is, I want to say he was the original creator of like Type Northwest or whatever. He's kind of, I don't know, tournament godfather in that area. But Type 1 is going to be free. Type 1 teams is going to be free. Type 2 is going to be free. And then sealed deck $6, booster draft $18. It's going to start at 9 a.m. on both days. So if you are planning to travel to that, I know there's a couple of people that are already planning there. I believe Tim is rumored to be potentially. No, maybe he's going to the regional and he's going to Kentucky State. But either way, let's just cue the next sound clip, you know.
Kentucky State.
Hosted by Booster Jones himself. Kentucky State is going to be happening The following weekend on April 4th and 5th at Oakdale Christian Academy in Jackson, Kentucky, $10 door fee, which is going to help cover the lodging accommodations that are offered there, otherwise free, with also some of the meals being provided. Type 1 is free. Type 1 teams is free. Type 2 is free. Sealed is $8 and booster draft is $24.
That's awesome.
It's going to start on 6 p.m. on Friday. And then after Friday, after you get a couple hours sleep, it's going to pick back up at 7 a.m. on Saturday. And it's going to be featuring Mr. Classic! Mr. Classic, that's right. Mr. Classic, the first time in its 3-year history, an open invitation to all players. So anyone can try to win the belt that is currently around the waist of Mr. Booster Jones. He's carrying it around almost as if it's a booster title. He's just, I heard a rumor that he wasn't planning on letting it go. So I don't know if the open field means that he's going to get snagged by some random player he might face. Because I feel like if you're sitting down, there's 8 players and you kind of know a history of the 8 players, you can kind of pinpoint what you expect to play against. All players, it could just be completely random. So Mr. Classic will be happening on Friday night of the Kentucky State Tournament. So we will have our potentially new champion, or we will have still Brian Jones. Who knows?
Go.
If I put you right now, just you had to pick, is Brian retaining?
No, he's not going to do it. He's good. He's going to get second place.
I think I've come around to, I think Booster Jones is going to hold the title for another year.
He probably will.
I think he will. Because a bigger field means that he can potentially try to avoid, he's not going to necessarily get paired up. I don't know. It depends on how many people play, but I think it's a benefit for him having a wide open field. Anyway, we'll see.
This week's Deck of the Week is presented by Your Turn Games. Join us as we take a deeper look at a deck that has sparked our interest and spotlight the mind behind it.
All right, Deck of the Week. We are here. We are going to talk about being I feel like I'm a leader for the Fat Boys Club. We're going to talk about Neapolitan ice cream.
What?
But in the form of a redemption deck. So
less calories.
Yeah, so clay, white,
more
brown, the colors kind of fit with the strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate ice cream that you would find in Neapolitan. Joe is here with us that crafted this deck. And Joe, I know you were looking at one time for some suggestions on decks, but I think Neapolitan is the closest thing you're going to get. And now that it's there, it just makes sense. So first tell us, before we get into the actual deck, how do you really feel about the name?
Honestly, I'm not that much of a fan.
See, I picked up on that when you were asking for what else can I call this pile of cards?
No, I've always been terrible with deck names, so I tend to normally just rely on, these are the archetypes or things that I'm trying to do, but
You just come up with something called take and just run with it.
Take, let's go. That's pure gold. Pure gold.
But anyway, so the first version I think I saw of this deck, I won't say it looked a lot more complex than the current state, but I feel like it did. It did look that way. It was kind of a hodgepodge of like, I'm going to do this, meek flip, gain a bunch of stuff. And I know you've done a couple of different defenses with it, but you've changed it up a little bit. And you played against a newcomer to the scene that I think is kind of like I don't know. I think it's got a good following and people think it's a really good deck, and that's Big Clay. So you played against Big Clay. I played against Big Clay and lost 5-4 in the Zoom Discord current tournament in the first week. You won 5-2, I believe was the number, the final score for that. So what does the deck look like currently? And did you intentionally change it to be able to compete with some of the more meta relevant decks like Big Clay?
Well, the most recent lists that I've posted in Z Temple, I think, best reflect where the deck's at. I'm kind of trying out a black defense as well right now. Even though I think the brown's still fine, I'm just trying to see what it looks like with, other options. And I was trying to trim it down a little bit defensively to fit in a resurrection package. Just because, we know how good that card is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's good enough that you're playing a deck that's not running it already, and you're calling it a resurrection package. If you have a package named after you, you're a good card.
Yeah.
Like a concealed riches package for you, Jake.
Mhm.
Yeah, and for me, right now, that's just, switching out Israel's rebellion, the defense, and adding in John and the woman with child.
Mhm.
That's about the only changes to make that work. Which, whenever you can get the play off, it's great banning in the Bethany trio or to your opponent's stuff, since NT is still really likely. It's just good. But overall, I guess against Big Clay, I didn't really change anything there. I was still playing the Brown defense there. I think in that game, the score should have been 5-3. And if we go back and look at the video and Babooni's notes, he just didn't play a Son of God before I got to the 5th,
Mhm.
was part of it. And I think even besides that, I was definitely fortunate that I had a lot of the stuff I needed when I needed it. But I think that kind of leads into the deck that one of the benefits of this is it does have very high consistency. It typically gets, what it wants when it wants. It's trying to establish an early Obed, try to rescue with David turn 1, get to a
Mhm.
Bethany trio if you can, or choose the blocker with Simon. I think overall I would say its difficulty comes in the form of decision trees. But
Yeah.
if you're able to navigate positions well, then you're often just setting up your opponent with a lot of choices where they have to try to make optimal ones with just about everything that they do, and that puts a lot of pressure on the opponent to just make a mistake. And it's not necessarily obvious that it's a mistake until after the fact, too.
Yeah. I'm liking this. You got a lot of battle winning enhancements in the main deck. Typically, a lot of decks tend to skip out on those, but you got a ton of them in here. And threshing floors, very interesting. I like the call back to we're the threshing floor, so we got the threshing floor in here. That's really cool. So there's just so many different directions. It's like you said, it's a mix between a Ruth offense and White Clay New Testament offense, and it has different directions that it can come at than other decks. So that's pretty cool. I like that.
Our earlier versions, how was it all slanted towards white? I feel like one of the first list I looked at was it had a lot of the white stuff, but it had more branching off sub themes within. And this latest one that you posted, because that's the one that I stole the screenshot and put in my outline. Even though it's got the black defense, it doesn't have the chocolate defense. But that's neither here nor there. But it feels like it's a lot more streamlined where you've got a bunch of white characters and things kind of match pretty well. And then I feel like a previous version I saw was a little bit more mix and match.
I would say it was definitely primarily originally just white. I think I was trying out more with trying to get Banner and Noah the Righteous going, that kind of thing. And honestly, I just like Noah as an answer to things on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to shuffle a card is just a strong ability, period.
Then as an elder, why did you let him print Prince of the Air? Because that card hates on Noah.
It does hate on Noah.
It's like Highwayman on steroids against Noah. Because I was worried at one time about Highwayman. Oh, it shuts Noah down. Well, now it's like Prince of the
Even
Air
better.
laughs at Highwayman trying to punish Noah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prince of the Air is definitely pretty strong. So we'll see how that card plays out. But we haven't really seen orange blocking defenses a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that'll help in that regard.
Maybe.
As a representation of Satan, it's good that we can have, a few versions of him that, kind of live up to the name, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. So how worried are you about your brigade count in this deck? Because you've got a lot of brigades floating around in here.
Overall, I haven't been too worried about it. I think out of all the games that I've played that have used like Disciples or Clay, almost every single game they've gotten a turn 1 Matthew, which has usually been a draw from 4 to 6, which can be a lot. But I've also only lost one of those games.
Nice.
Which I think was the game to you where you got the like turn 0 3 nails off on me.
Oh yeah.
So
look, for me, like I try to avoid foreign wives in main deck because I don't want people to see that with Matthew or something else. But there's something to be argued about. Like, let them draw, and then we'll see if they find their level in another. And if they don't, then they got to discard a bunch of cards at the end of the turn.
yeah, for the brown version of the deck, I've got her in the reserve. In the black version, if they draw, then I'm likely just trying to get to Herdsman, and I'll draw 2.
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Kind of the way I'm looking at defenses right now is more than likely, at least from the way I'm seeing it, you might get 2 blocks a game, maybe. And that might be even optimistic, because I think there's a lot of games where blocking just doesn't really work well. Offenses have gotten so strong, especially with the various good dominants they can use. It can make defenses hard to play. So I think you need to either try to create decisions for the opponent to where they make something you could take advantage of, or you need to be able to try to capitalize with some card advantage, or just whatever you can. That was one of the things that led me to the Brown defense. Was I noticed Israel's Rebellion was often a block, whereas a lot of defenses can't really say that with, Christian Martyr often isn't good enough. Falling Away is often not good enough. Glory often isn't good enough. So it's that was one of the things. And then other than that, Haman. Haman with Haman's plot is really, really good.
Really good, yeah.
Being able to target not just their offense, but their defense is kind of massive too, if you need it. And I think just being able to take out important characters, even if you lose a battle, often can help you win the game in the long run if you can do it early enough. Which early access to Haman and plot can do. Confusion was another thing that I really liked with the Brown.
Yeah,
if you play it, you often just win.
Exactly. If confusion lands before they get to play Son of God, then like that's 2 free. That you've gotten 2 blocks out of that, like just by playing the enhancement. No matter what happens for the rest of the phase, assuming they can't negate last. So that's really brutal for sure.
So leaning into what you said about blocking and being optimistic of even getting 2 blocks, I think a lot of that too is the player base currently, and I think it's always been slanted that way because the game isn't set up to value defense. You can't win with defense unless you're Jaden and you're converting and doing shenanigans and Rob Sheka's threats and whatever, unless you're doing stuff like that. But I feel like there's less willingness now for overall. It seems like. I know that there was a time where it was crazy to put more than 6 evil characters in your deck. I think one of the Marshall brothers, I believe it was Nick, was quoted as saying, all you need is Deceiver, Foreign Wives, and there was one other character at the time, and that was your defense. That was obviously pre-rotation, but now I think we're at a point to where people just favor the kind of quick play offense, because I feel like if you're playing an aggressive deck and you're doing the offensive stuff, you're talking about branching decisions and things. I feel like it's easier to make those decisions when you're rescuing. And then I think players just, it feels like there's just an acceptance to kind of the basis that you gave of you're only really going to have 1, maybe 2 true blocking opportunities in a game. And then the game's going to kind of be decided by battle dominance outside of that. So how well does your deck handle if it can't block early on? Is it kind of do you feel like you have comeback potential with it? Because I feel like some decks are better suited to overcome an early disadvantage, and then some are a little bit okay. Some of them are just bad when they get jumped on early. So how does this deck fit in with that?
I'd probably say, at least with the brown defense, I'm still testing the black, so I can't speak too much to that yet. The defense blocks at a similar rate to other defenses that I've seen. Like I said, Israel's Rebellion is very often a block. It does have that double-edged capacity of shuffling souls, but I try to mitigate that with a fair bit of soul gen and often just having souls that accrue value when you replay them. So things like Grumbled Shepherds, if you get another Prosperity, that's more card advantage, things like that. There's still cards like the Woman of the Bez in there. She's just good enough to potentially get a block on her own. And then other than that, just being able to leverage some of the CBN enhancements like Plot or Reap the Whirlwind, potentially even a Confusion. I count that as a block if you can play it, early enough. It's mostly if I can slip in 1 to 2 of those a game, that's often, what you would expect of most defenses. So it feels like it's similarly positioned. And trying to think of what else. I think just the consistency to get to certain things often helps and forces the opponent to use resources that they wouldn't necessarily like to. Like a good example was in the game against Big Clay with Tim. First block I attempted was, getting a draw one off of Wandering Israelites to Korra to get a Reap the Whirlwind after he did some banding with Resurrection. At that point, he has to decide, do I play Reap the Whirlwind, or does he, in addition to playing Resurrection, play his crowd's choice to get Angel of the Lord to stop that? And if you're playing 3 good dominants to get a rescue, that's often a good enough trade that'll help you later on down the line.
Yeah, he's down to 11. But still, no, 3 good dominants on the rescue.
I mean, but by that token, he doesn't.
No.
Well, I mean, I guess he does have enough ammo to use 9 to get 3 souls the hard way.
So I guess a good example was Tim using that crowd's choice there meant he couldn't use it to block.
On defense, yes, 100%. And he didn't want to have to use that crowd's choice on offense. That's clear. He has a ton of dominance in his deck, sure, but that's a lot of his power soaked up into one attack, and that's really speaks to the threat of the deck's defense. I mean, Reap the Whirlwind is a very good card. Being Mono Brigade means it can deal with cards like Michael, Chief Prince, etc. That would kind of, or Goshen or something else that would kind of normally toss it. So that's a really good card right there for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it just comes down to, like I said, the decision trees. Because, Tim had to come up with, the rescue that he thought was best there. And it's okay, well, I think I had an Amalekite slave in hand at that point. So that could represent a number of things. That could be a Woman of the Bez. That could be any of my Wilderness characters. It could be a Haman, which can grab a Haman's plot. So it's, and if he goes too big and, doesn't have something like Crowd's Choice, I can likely get off the Confusion very early if I need to. It's, make them think. And if you have enough ability to either pivot around what they're doing, or if what you're doing is good enough to make them use a bunch of resources, I think that's more of what defenses need to be doing, is just encouraging mistakes from the opponent.
Okay, I'm just going to ask it. I know that it's not going to see a lot of meta play, I don't believe, but how much does this deck hate Guardian of Your Souls?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I feel like it would probably not be a great time, but it honestly hasn't.
Turn 1, if they open Guardian, I feel like maybe you just shake hands.
The weird thing is, I don't really know, just because the deck runs enough battle winners and searching otherwise that, I mean, it makes the deck, worse, obviously, but the opponent's also running Guardian, so
Yeah, so
their deck
you've already
is.
won a little bit.
So it's like
But
I
if it's
should, in
but
theory,
if it's
have time
Tim and
to.
Big Clay, you got 13 more. But in a standard 7 Dom lineup, yeah. Only reason I asked is because I've been playing a little bit of the Purple Heart deck,
Mhm.
and so I'm a little bit like, when I saw your list and we were talking about doing it for Deck of the Week, I'm just thinking, man, this card really would have a purpose against this deck. It doesn't usually against most decks, unless you're like Moabites or you're really trying to get the woman of the biz, the cheap play of, here, I'm going to give you this and protect souls. But just wondering, because it kind of leads into another thought of, separate from that, but kind of in the same vein as a deck like this. And I think it does have a lot more flexibility, but we saw Honeypot, last year or whatever at the first TJC tournament came out, and it didn't have a lot of headroom to adjust to things that if people started teching for it. And I don't think that we're at the point to where people are going to build this in prevalent numbers enough that people are going to tech specifically for it. I was just wondering how much you feel like the headroom is. If somebody took this deck and wanted to play it through the tournament season and work their way towards nationals. And that's another thing that I guess we didn't really even analyze that much earlier, but only getting to check one deck at nationals now means that some of these outliers, like, you're going to have to really, like, I mean, most people weren't playing multiple decks, but the option to check a second deck or something kind of could influence what you play throughout the tournament season. But if somebody want to take this and run with it and work themselves towards nationals, how much do you think this can adapt to different meta threats from the other decks that are common and that we're expecting to see?
I think overall, the deck should be able to adapt well. I mean, honestly, one of the difficulties I've had with this deck is figuring out which options to play, because there's a lot of ways you can pivot with the deck. Whether you want to rely on more of the clay stuff, more of the white, you can do some side battle shenanigans. You can do plenty of stuff with banding, without banding, even just which heroes to include in the deck. I mean, it's flexible enough on the offense that, it's running enough good things. You should be able to rescue and get to dominance early, so that's good on its own. And the defense, I'm not convinced that I'm on necessarily the correct defense for it, but that also means that you have flexibility in choosing what you want to run there. Because I think you could pair this with quite a few different things and still be very successful. It's not tied to using brown or
Just for the name concept, just for the chocolate.
Yeah, I mean, the brown was, I think, mostly me trying to see if it could work, and so far I'd say it's been mostly successful.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's kind of cool because this is kind of a blend of, well, at least the early list was kind of like using some of the GOC stuff to still have LOCB involved with the David. I know you originally had Noah in there and things like that. So it felt like, I don't know, at least enough of a different thing. And it's still different than just common like GOC straight offenses paired with whatever chump defense you can and playing just reckless speed. And then it's not, oh, well, now Israel's Inheritance is out, so there's Joshua and Thieves prevalent. And then there's, we do have some green getting played, but I guess Joshua Thieves, I think, from competitive play, is probably the only one that is going to be in heavy numbers from II. Or, maybe it's like the post-exilic mix that Jaden's trying. Maybe that gets picked up by a few people. But I think just increasing the variety of decks that are getting played and then being able to do well enough with it, because again, so much of this game still comes down to how well you know your deck. And if you're going to play it, those branching decisions that you mentioned, how well you are at reading the current state of the game and knowing which decision to make. And being able to just adapt and flow within the confines of whatever the game is presenting at the time, I think is still one of the biggest things, no matter which deck you're playing. You know, like I can have like 8 or 10 decks built, but one or two of those that I know better than the rest is going to be better, even if it's not necessarily the best list, evidenced by the fact that Big Clay, while there's a lot of people that think that 100-card decks are, get Jay Chambers on the phone, he'll argue you to the death that 100-card decks do not work. But Tim's built the deck. He knows it well enough, and he's had really good success. Some of that even goes beyond, is it a 100-card deck, is it a 50-card deck? It's just how well does he know his deck versus how well does someone else popping in for a Lackey Grand Prix game or something know their deck because they're quote-unquote testing a bunch of stuff out before tournament season and things. But anyway, I think it's cool, and so I'm glad that we were able to spotlight it here. And I know that you said at some point something that kind of got under my skin a little bit about just people in general, was you didn't know if people believed in the list or didn't believe in the list, or maybe they didn't believe in you as a deck builder. And I think there's like a shrinking number of people in the community that build decks that people think is, oh, that deck's good just because that person built it. I think there used to be a bunch of, well, not a bunch, but feels like more, because there was John Early involved. You had Jay, Jeremy. I don't. There was it feels Hendricks. Like that list is shrinking. No, never John Hendricks. But doesn't it feel like that list is shrinking a little bit to where, like, just based on the name, now it's like Tim and Jaden.
I mean, I do think there's probably a degree of truth to that. I think it's more of ideas are almost being railroaded, is kind of how I'd put it. Players will often go with groupthink rather than actually try to explore, what they think is good. There's still quite a few people that will, build and try to innovate, try new things and ideas. But I think oftentimes we'll have players just be like, well, no one else has done this, so it can't be good. Mm-hmm. Or, it'll be, well, I haven't seen it do well, so what would make me think it can do well? When oftentimes some of the best ideas and things are the things that do catch the meta off guard. I guess a good example for me, just from a recency bias, is something like Hezron and Nativity. Like, that was an innovation that people, hadn't really tried or expected. Turned out to be brilliant play. We've seen plenty of national winning decks that, kind of come out of the blue as well. I mean, I guess it's been a little while ago, but, John Early taking a deck to Nats that didn't have Son of God in it was able to, steamroll with a combo that no one saw coming. I mean, he even did something similar with his Covenant with Death and Choose the Blocker stuff that he was doing. Like, there's ways to innovate that don't follow the trends of the meta. And I think players are often hesitant to do that.
I'll let you say it and you stir up the controversy. So just calling you out, community.
Let's do it. Explore. Find new things.
I don't want to go into a rabbit trail over it, but just a thought-provoking thing is, I wonder how much of that is influenced in that, like, just... I feel like there's a lot of people, too, that make a decision on a deck before they ever play it, and then they never play it, and they just assume that opinion is correct and honest to themselves, and it's really just a disservice to themselves and potentially the deck and people that share decks. But I wonder how much of that is kind of a negative side effect of sharing deck lists so much that now we feel like if a deck isn't getting shared by multiple people, or it doesn't get the same notoriety, it can't be as good, just as like almost a natural thing. Oh, well, he shared it, nobody picked it up, nobody said anything about it, it can't be that good. So it's probably the pros and cons of the free share and free exchange of information, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to that. And I mean, one person always comes to mind with this kind of stuff, and Emmanuel Echeverria. Everyone keeps telling that man that Daniel's bad, and
Daniel's
yet
like
somehow he starts, top cutting and placing in Type 2 and doing all this kind of crazy stuff with the
That
deck
goes
that's supposed
back
to be
to
bad.
it.
So
Even if it's not as good, even if it's a full step down from other meta top tier decks, he knows it inside and out, and nothing can circumvent the fact that you have to know your deck in a way that you are able to do all those decisions and reading the gameplay and knowing what to do.
And there is an advantage to playing a deck that people aren't prepared to play against when you're prepared to play against what they're doing.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll stop throwing stones at the community's glass houses. But glad we could share the spotlight with you here and talk about your deck, Neopolitan Ice Cream. Even though now it's got a black defense potentially, or still trying to settle on the defense. But if anybody else has any cool names to come up with for this deck, mostly white with clay stuff on offense. David's got a little red in there if you want to use that. I mean, if you're not a fan of Neopolitan, I don't know if you're going to get a better deck name. But you can't go with black and white because newspaper was used last year.
Yeah, newspaper got used up. Who did that?
I don't know who did that. But anyway, thanks for coming on and sharing with us.
Yeah.
Always good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on and highlighting the deck, So it's been fun, even if it's been a bit of a wild card, bit of a deck. Just feel free to explore. You'd
Wild
be
card,
surprised
loose
what can
cannon,
win.
whatever other cool names.
Now, it's your chance to join the podcast and have your voice heard as we get ready to answer your questions with this week's Community Mailbag.
That's right. Your turn to join the podcast here as we jump into the always interesting, never dull community mailbag. So we've got a question here from Mr. Booster Jones himself, one of our repeat customers in the mailbag. But he's asking, and I feel like this is a really good question, and I think it's an important question because I will be honest, this past year has felt like coming out of the dead season or the off season for Redemption has really been a struggle to get the excitement picked back up. I don't know if everyone else is feeling that, but I've definitely been feeling that. But anyway, he asked here, what are some unique ideas to improve Redemption's 8 to 9 month off season? And when he says improve, I think what he's meaning by that is to lessen the off season where players step away and things. How do we keep it more interesting throughout the calendar year versus just having a 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 month window of like people are really excited about the game and then they kind of just taper off otherwise. So I've got one huge idea that I've mentioned a couple of times and I still think it's like the right thing. Personally, I think we should do it. But before I do that, I'll just open it up to you and see do you have any ideas of how to kind of help in this regard?
I do think that if Lacking can get the new set a little bit faster, and we can hold some big tournaments during that part of the off season when the new set is out, and get some prize support and get some people on some LGP games and that type of thing, or some early Zoom invitationals, some big prize support. Like that might be the stuff to really like get the community going, because we had a lot of people really interested in II at the beginning, and then they were kind of like, please don't use the bootleg Lacking.
I even was building decks when I built my war.
Everything like slowed down really fast there. So if we could like stoke the fires when the new set comes out and like, hey, new set's out, let's go, let's burn, let's see what we can do, that'd be really cool for sure.
Yeah. So what you said kind of leads into mine, and I'm sure that I've shared it since you've been on the podcast. If not, I know that you've heard it before, because I know that you listened to the podcast before, or at least you claimed you did. Hopefully you didn't lie. But let me tell you, when I first came to the game, it was 2019, right? So the very next year was affected by COVID. And there was a period where people were not able to do like states and regionals before nationals. And for that year only, it was allowed to have your state or regional tournament in the fall. Now, I'm not advocating that we get rid of spring, summer at all. I just think once that new set comes out at Nationals, everybody's really excited. And you're talking about stoke that fire, have people have a purpose to build decks, because you don't have a purpose to build decks really truly until tournament season, when state tournaments are about to happen. So we almost force this as a game on players. We're like, hey, don't get excited about it because there's nothing to do with it until tournament season. And then we force tournament season to happen within such a compact 3 to 4 month period. And that's the busiest 3 to 4 month period for a lot of people with kids, because you have obviously school, but then after that, you've got your summer vacations. It's around spring break time. It's just a part of the calendar that really fills up with a lot of things. There's baseball season. I know my kid plays baseball, and then that involves traveling a lot of times on the weekends and things. There's just a lot of things happening that fill up your calendar to where now you're having to pick and choose which dates you can even fit these big tournaments in order to have them and have people be able to travel to them. I'm not saying to change that and affect that. Let that continue how it is. But what is the harm in having a second state tournament offered that you can only have in the fall?
That'd be really cool.
So that each state can have its big, like, new sets come out. Now you can work up to it. Players can build these decks, and you can have a hangout time, just a state tournament. You can only count one of them. So you can only win one state that actually counts towards R&RS. So how would it affect any? I don't get a negative effect at all.
No, it's not good.
So I think it would only really be positive. And maybe it's the fact that the state promo, but you could just give out the promo that's from the previous, like from that
previous year. Yeah.
Because like if we did it in the fall this year after Nationals, then the state promo is still Samson.
Yeah.
Just give that away.
Yep.
But the reason I like this idea is in 2020, my first tournament that I went to that was not at Jay and Jeremy's place at the time. Jay was still down here in Alabama. Like, they talked me into, they weren't going to go, but they talked me into taking this jank deck that I had built. And they were like, dude, you might even be able to win. And I was like, okay. So I traveled to Knoxville, Tennessee, met Chris Fashman for the first time, and attended his fall regional. And so it gave me a purpose, like in this otherwise dead period of the calendar. I went up there and I ended up winning my first like big tournament. And it was such a cool experience and whatnot that if it wasn't for that tournament, I wouldn't have been playing. I wouldn't have been actively trying to push that deck and tweak it to go and participate in that. And I feel like we could replicate that intentionally by having a fall state tournament. And so, like, Alabama can have a spring or I don't know how you just decide from the beginning of the year or whenever he starts approving state tournaments until Nationals or whatever time you have to do it before Nationals. Nationals happens, R&RS resets, and then you have a fall state, and then you have spring state and spring regional or summer or whatever, and then you go into Nationals, and it's just a repeatable pattern. I think that could work to generate. It's kind of like, look how big the Thomas J. Chambers Memorial Tournament was the first year. And I feel like there was a decent amount of participation for it this year. And those were tournaments that happened to where you had to travel to them. So, like, for example, in Alabama, it wasn't here. It was either in Texas. You had like one version of it or one leg of it. And then you had it in Michigan. So I would have to travel that far to participate. Well, if I had my own state tournament here, I could bring people in and at least the localized group here and surrounding states could have an option to participate. It would get more people in more pockets of the country able to participate and have something to work towards in the dead period. And then think about, we're talking about all of this data about decks and whether they're meta relevant or where they fit in with the meta, and we don't have any real data yet. Imagine if we had a bunch of state tournaments to analyze that happened in the fall.
Definitely.
I feel like that's a no-brainer. Like that would be huge for the game to have a fall state tournament.
I agree. That sounds good.
All right, you want to take this next question?
Yeah.
It's more of a statement here.
Yeah.
Getting buttered up by Charles, but you can take it.
Yeah, this is from Charles Loria. Thank you both for making this podcast extremely informative, thought-provoking, and entertaining. You are my source of entertainment to work, from work, and when no one is looking at work. We are in the golden age of redemption content, but are there any specific avenues that, in your opinion, still need to be explored further? In other words, what kind of redemption content is still lacking? Would you find POV official tournament gameplay of open, closed categories entertaining? Thanks, from Charles. Thank you, Charles. What do you think?
You want me to take it first?
Yeah, you take it on.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like this is hand in hand. I don't know if you saw the other day he asked about a mic setup to record. I don't know if you saw that, but it was like a small, like on your person recording. So I feel like this might go hand in hand with his idea of mentioning like POV gameplay. If we're strictly talking about like content generation, I definitely think that there is a market for creating some of that type of gameplay. Something that I've kind of wanted to do it myself, but I don't feel like I'm a good enough drafter to do it. But I might would even do it anyway, even if I'm a terrible drafter. But wear like a GoPro and sit there and let
That'd be cool.
Footage happen of, like, if we could get Brian Jones to sit there and just show all of his secrets. Maybe he doesn't want to show all of his secrets, but just a couple of players that are well-established, good players at booster draft to be able to do that. I think it was Jacob Arrowwood at Nationals. He did pretty well. I think he stole the plaque. He didn't steal it, but they gave him the plaque instead of Brian because he's won so many before, but he's a good player at booster. Josh Knitt, decent player at booster from, I guess a little bit older, I don't know, community vibe. Haven't seen him be too active lately, but I know that when he was active, he was pretty good. He's the one that designed Ends of the Earth as a booster-specific style of card to help with Soul Gen. But get one of those established players that are good at it to just kind of show the strategy involved. Here's a pack. I did something similar just because I wanted to test out my camera the other day, and I threw it out on YouTube. It was just, okay, here's a pack of II, and opened it up and just kind of gave my thoughts on the cards of like which order I would take them in a booster draft. But that doesn't really give you context because you don't know what other cards have been picked. But to sit there and see someone go through all of the cards in a pack and then pass it and see it actually happen, I think could be really beneficial and maybe even help someone understand more fully what booster draft is like. So I think there's a market for that. Maybe even the process of doing the stuff for sealed deck. And we're not even talking about just the benefit of like strategy involved. Just seeing it happen to where a player feels more comfortable going to a tournament and saying, oh, I will play that category because I understand at least what's expected and how it goes, I think could be really beneficial. So I think there's definitely room for that. And I think there's also room for more laid back, casual gameplay between players to where, for example, a while back, I think it was really right after the default targeting rules update, which happened around Thanksgiving, not this past year, but the year before. So what would that be? 2023. There was a game between the Allsteads, Justin and Jaden, just a casual play, and they were kind of giving their thoughts as they go through decisions and things like that. Break down the walls of competitive I want to win, and having established players talk through the decision making as they go through that, I think could be beneficial content that we don't necessarily get. I know we get sometimes Jaden talking through his decision making, or even Tim on some of their videos, but having the players do it in a live simulation of a game could be beneficial. So I'll pass it back to you. What do you think?
Okay, I got a few things written down here.
I did see you writing down. I thought I was just giving you such good details that you were writing down notes.
Taking notes. This is good. This is good. No. So, like you said, actually, this was inspired by you, but what if we had a draft? Oh, we have a sealed LGP that finished into a top 8 with a top 8 draft LGP. Like, that would be super cool. Like like it starts off with sealed, like they randomly
And then
generate
you
a
get to
sealed,
top 8 and you boost
and
it.
then top 8 you actually do a booster draft,
I
and that would
like
be
it.
super cool. That would be amazing. So that would be really fun.
So we would call that the limited Grand Prix.
Exactly, the limited, the
Oh,
LLG.
LG.
Oh man,
LGP.
LGP. Yeah. So we got that. That'd be really fun. I'm thinking more podcasts. I'd love to hear like thoughts from Portland or something. Like that'd be really cool if there's another podcast called Thoughts from Portland. And other people that were just sharing their thoughts. Like obviously this is a podcast here, but we'd love to have competition. We'd love to have people.
Whoa. Competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa.
Come on, competition. Come on.
No.
People sharing what they're thinking, just sharing more media for the community.
It does bring back, before you get to your next point, it does bring back the fact that I really want to, I know that I talked about doing it back when Brad was co-host and then never did it, but like Threshing Floor Live, of just being able to get on like stream on YouTube, just pop in, maybe have random people that are available to hop on, and there's no editing pressure. So it's just like talking, and I don't have to edit it.
That'd be awesome.
I think the conversations and things that could, branch out from that would be cool. So I'm totally on board with trying to do something like that when schedules align and things are, I wouldn't even have to have you involved. Not that, it wouldn't be better with you, but like if I just, Thursday at 7, I know I'm going to be available, and I just put that out there, and whoever was available at 7, or I could reach out to some random community member, and we'll just start the party with me and some random person and then see where it goes from there. I mean, I assume the community would be interested in that stuff, or we could even do it like an open, kind of like an open mailbag thing to where we just open it up and people write in their questions. Maybe we rope Jaden into it, and they send questions for, I don't know, a good competitive player, so I can't answer them, but Jaden can. Anyway, carry on.
And my last one here is more short videos, just people like Alex. I know Alex used to post some of these and like his thoughts on the current game and like, I think this card could be used. I think like a player like him would be really fun to hear like his take, because he's always got a different perspective on the meta game. Like I'd love to see little short videos and clips of people like, I think this would be a good idea for a deck, like not podcast length, but maybe 5-10 minutes of their thoughts that day, this week on the redemption, on the game, etc. So I'd love to see some short form content like that too. So that's what I'm thinking of. Those are things I'd love to see in the game right now.
Did you happen to look at that booster thing, that pack or whatever that I did?
No, I didn't. I didn't get to it.
It wasn't anything that I planned. I literally just wanted to test my camera, and I had a pack of II sitting here. So I was like, I'm going to open this up and do it. And then I pulled a Tyler. He said he hopes that didn't stick in a comment on the video, but I pulled a Tyler, recorded it, and didn't have my audio feeding into it. So I ended up with just raw footage with no audio. So I redid it. But the guy that I mentioned, Eric, 57 Beef earlier, I asked him a bunch of things that he has questions about and how they work. And I was thinking about, because I don't like Lackey for a lot of things. I do like it as a resource. I like it being available, but I much prefer paper cards, like sitting down, having the cards here. So I was thinking, camera down view, maybe. Like one thing that he was struggling with was knowing about territory class, like one territory class. Everybody always says like one TC, but it's really one territory class enhancement. So maybe there's a question about how many characters you can play in a turn or whatever, or have active. Just something simple like that. And I got a whole list of things that he has questions about. And I was thinking about doing short little like 10, 12-minute videos kind of explaining them with real paper cards. Because most people that are going to interact with the game, the first thing they're going to do is have cards that they ordered, and they're going to have physical cards. They might not be set up in Lackey. And I think jumping straight into Lackey with all the different options and stuff and knowing the user interface can be a little overwhelming for some people. So I thought that would be cool. And it's kind of in line with what you were saying, just short little quick videos. But I think also just more people willing to do something to create content, I think is a big step. Like we've got the established people that are making content, but you don't have to be a great player to make content. You don't have to put pressure on yourself to feel like you have to be at a certain competitive level before your words carry any weight to where anybody would want to hear them. Because I know you for one, and I'm kind of like that too. is no matter what kind of content is put out, we will soak it up. Now, you'll do it a lot faster than I will. Like, I'll do it, like, it'll take me a little while. Like,
Yeah.
I won't be as up to speed on it as soon as it comes out. But putting anything out, like when you used to record your gameplay and put it out even without audio over it and stuff, I watched those games. And that's just as simple as I'm playing in like Grand Prix, I click screen record and boom, there it is.
Yeah.
So I think just more people willing to do something towards putting content out would be huge as well.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just try it.
Yep. So last question, we'll finish up here and get you out of here. But we got Brian Jones again. So going several weeks sometimes in between podcasts means that there's some questions that just linger. And then by the time we ask, and he's one of those that puts in a lot of questions here. So he's always got good questions. So we'll let him keep being a heavy hitter in the community mailbag here. But he says in this question, what would you like to see Redemption raise money for next? And if I know Brian, I know that is a question to kind of say that let's get some cool things on the fundraiser page. Let's spice it up a little bit with some new cool foils or something. Probably want some goodies, but also in the context of what could we actually raise money for? So I'm going to give this one to you. And I'm going to sit here and think about it a little bit because I don't really know what is the next feasible and realistic thing to raise money for.
I think, I don't know if this would work, but like maybe raising money to make a little bit larger sets and maybe increase the size of packs so there's not as many root cards, change the percentage of root cards to expansion cards in the packs. And like, I think and also the other thing I'd like is some special like supplementary set released every year. We talked about this before, but like Redemption 2025, like these are the cards that we think we missed out on for some brigades are missing some cards that we thought we could use. So I'd love to see that. So I think that's what I'd do. I'd like to expand the size of expansions, maybe some more expansion cards in the packs, and maybe a supplementary set every year or every 2 years or something like that, just to like spice things up.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you something along those lines. What if you couldn't get a bunch of... So you could definitely do like the 10s, which I would caution. I think the 10s were a little over the power level at the time, and they kind of skewed things with some of the card abilities. So we don't want to have a repeat of that to where it negatively skews the meta game or anything. But you could have like a promo 10 can, our 10 set that you could buy maybe around like the holidays. So we could gear up to try to have them in production for, I don't know, around the holidays this year, a holiday 10 set. And it have some of those, cards that just touch up different themes that need a little bit of help or something like that.
We need those heretics cards. We need the deacon cards. They don't
Yeah. You got to lay off the heretics and the deacons, man. At this point, it's a joke that's just breaking my heart. Somebody's going to really think that we sat down and I tried to play that deck. I would never. There's no heretics in Genesis is all I know.
Exactly.
What would you think about Redemption having maybe like once a year they came out with like a structure deck?
Structure deck. So like kind
of like it's not a starter deck, but it's like maybe a step up past starter deck, but it's on the level of like contender-ish decks. But it would be with cards that are heavily accessible and don't have crazy power level. I don't know. The first year, it would probably be kind of boring because it would just be this one thing. But if you got into a situation to where 5 years down the road, every year you had done a structure deck, then there's one here, the 25 structure deck, then the 26 structure deck, and it was just picked out some theme. So like we talked about Samson kind of being a hero without a home. What if you made a home for him in the form of a structure deck, and you just had this 50 card deck come out with, a 5-card reserve, something like that. Or even if you used like Meek Souls and you didn't have to put abilities on all the souls to make it a little bit less taxing. But I don't know, just something like that It's just an idea because I know a lot of trading card games have the starter decks.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have something in between the next step up of like competitive play. So we go starter deck. Then the next thing we're asking people to do is build their competitive deck or build their tournament deck. And there's no in between. So you go from starter decks to, okay, I'm getting ran over by Jeremy Chambers playing a combo deck.
Yeah.
And not that a structured deck would run with Jeremy Chambers' deck, but it would kind of be the next step up. So it would be like a step evolution before we say starter decks. Now build your own deck.
Mm-hmm. Like in a deck that actually like mimicked what tournament gameplay looks like a little bit, with maybe an end the battle card, a stalemate card, etc. Like currently, like people don't understand that starter decks have very little in common with what modern Redemption decks look like. Like they look more like draft than anything else, because in draft there's lots of negate fights and stuff. Yeah, but in modern Redemption, you probably only get 1 or 2 negate fights that are actually like really like, real negate fights per game, if you're lucky. Sometimes you don't have, like, you literally just have 3 attacks where, oh, you couldn't block because they stopped all my blockers, and I couldn't block because you stopped all my blockers. Like, sometimes it just goes back and forth without, like, the only blocks are Christian Martyr, and the only blocks are something like Burial. Like, sometimes it's just like that. So it'd be really cool to have a deck that showed off, like, what modern Redemption's kind of like without actually being...
it doesn't have to be super competitive.
Exactly.
It just has to, like, have more tournament level mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some idea, right? And that would be a cool idea because it could be something that helps expose the game to more players, because there's a lot of players that I get really bored quickly with the starter decks, even when showing somebody brand new. It's because I feel like after they play 2 games with it, they're ready to move on, but they're not ready to move on in the sense that I can pick up 2 tournament decks and play. Yeah. Because that's too far advanced. So like just something healthy, medium in between, I think would be really good for the game. And maybe that's something that is possible. Maybe it's not with the current structure of what Cactus does. But personally, the next product that I would want to see for the game, you ready for this? I feel like I've mentioned it before, but now more so than ever. Have you ever seen the Battle Academy Pokemon board game thing?
No.
And so it comes with like 2 or 3 different decks and a board game board. So it lays out and tells you where the cards go and things. Lorcana now has one as well, which is the recently released, like within the last few years, Disney card game. So it's a board game. You open it up and it tells you where the cards go. It has decks and you're ready to play. I think Redemption, especially Cactus, known for like games, like board games. Yeah. Why don't we have something that shows them where cards go on the field of play? I know we don't have anything quote unquote super official, but let's make something. Have a board game so you can market it as a potential board game crossover. Because there's some people that'll buy what they think is more of a board game before they will just a straight trading card game. Yeah. And I feel like it's easier to teach because you have now a visual of this is where cards go and things. And you can even have like what you can do in a turn listed out. Like the Pokemon says you can play 1 trainer card per turn or whatever it is. We could have on there that you can play any number of characters down. You can play 1 territory class enhancement, and you can list out the different phases. So much information you can put there. And I feel like just packaging that, here's Redemption in a box. Even if it's just the K&L starter decks, you put in there with it. I think you could sell that and probably get it in people's hands that wouldn't otherwise pick up a quote-unquote trading card game. Now, obviously, they'll know it's a trading card game, but I feel like it allows some people to have a little bit more of a comfort zone because here's a board. I know how to play board games. This is a board. It's laying it out like a board game. And then I feel like it just gives another product that people can interact with for the first time to get an idea of what Redemption as a game is like. I think that would be cool to see that offered from Cactus at some point in the future. Yeah, and we could use the fundraiser to obviously throw some cool things that people want, or even just the things that are on there, and just give a goal for what we're raising money for next. Because personally, I don't like that we have a fundraiser out there and it's still got all these offerings, and that's great. I think those cards should stay accessible for people, especially, now that, Cloud of Witnesses out of print, that's your only way to get a Second Coming new that's not already in circulation. But doesn't it feel like it would be better if we had this fundraiser happening, but we had some kind of goal associated with it? I don't like it just kind of lingering there.
Floating.
People can buy stuff when they want to.
Yeah.
I feel like just set a goal and let's smash things. Like, let's come up with ideas. This is what we want to have. Redemption needs its own like landing page website, so it doesn't go Cactus Game Design, then click on a bunch of things to get to Redemption. Go to redemptiontcg.com, Redemption CC, whatever you want to call it, redemption.com. Get there, boom, load right into it. To see tournament results uploaded by tournament host to where they're like in real time, that would be awesome. Something like that. But something that generates excitement would be nice and would probably help us with some of this like extended dead period that the game has had this past season or off season. But those are some really good questions.
Great questions.
Great questions, as always. Definitely want to appreciate people popping in and dropping some questions for the community mailbag. So if you are interested in having your question heard on the podcast, read out, answered, you can go, and we now have this pinned on the blog and Discord, on Discord, on the blog and podcast channel. It's now pinned, so you can go and check the pins in the channel and get the link to submit your own questions for the community mailbag. But, fella, I think we can get out of here and call it a night. What do you think?
Sounds good. Sounds like a good one.
Yep, absolutely. Welcome to tournament season. First state tournaments down. We are definitely in tournament season. So the only thing left to do is to win.
Win big.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Peace.
See ya. Peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Threshing Floor Podcast. Help us grow our community by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss the next episode. And we'll talk to you next time on the Threshing Floor Podcast.